Meet the Press with Paul Bongiorno.
Good morning and welcome to Meet the Press. Another week and the international financial crisis deepens. The Reserve Bank stuns with a 1% interest rate cut and warns our Asian trading partners face significant moderation in growth. In Europe, some of the world's biggest economies move to prop up their banks. Britain reluctantly joining the trend.
This is not a time for conventional thinking or outdated dogma, but for the fresh and innovative intervention that gets to the heart of the problem.
It's quite clear now that the international financial crisis is the key international economic issue.
On his return from a ministerial meeting in the Philippines, Stephen Smith is a guest. And later, a negative report card in a shock new national survey of state school principals. First, what the papers are reporting this Sunday, October 12. The Sun Herald leads with the World Financial Crisis meetings in Washington. United we stand, the headline, after proclaiming the G7 ministers have got the whole world in their hands. The meeting agreed urgent and exceptional action was needed.
There have been moments of crisis in the past when powerful nations turned their energies against each other or sought to wall themselves off from the world. This time is different.
The Sunday Telegraph's front page forecasts a $100,000 bank safety net. The Rudd government is today expected to guarantee bank deposits, possibly up to $100,000, to bolster confidence in the banking system. The Sunday Herald Sun reports family blames foul play. Britt Lapthorne's family believes her death was not an accident and wants to find out how she died. The 21-year-old's badly decomposed body was identified yesterday after she went missing just over 3 weeks ago in the Croatian tourist city of Dubrovnik. The Sunday Mail reports on the collapse of the power-sharing deal in Zimbabwe. Mugabe takes key ministries. Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe and his opponent Morgan Tsvangirai have called for new mediation to save the desperate nation's governing arrangements. Well, despite the Reserve Bank finding accumulating evidence of a slowdown among our Asian trading partners, the Chinese Premier was able to assure our Prime Minister Beijing still wanted to do big business with us. And the Foreign Minister got a first-hand look at the region during the week. And welcome back to the program, Stephen Smith.
Pleasure, Paul. Good morning.
Well, just going to the international meeting in Washington today, the G20, where our Treasurer, Wayne Swan, is attending. Can anything really come out of these meetings?
Well, they have to. I just spoke to the Treasurer this morning. He just come out of the final of the IMF meetings. He's got the G20 meeting later this afternoon, Australia time. He made the point, which I picked up in the Philippines last week, which is a growing realisation that this crisis is much worse than people originally expected. In that context, of course, Australia is better placed than most to take advantage of it. Our regulatory and prudential arrangements have been very sound for a number of years. The old adage with the Australian economy used to be that if the United States sneezed, Australia got a cold. We're now much more buttressed by our trade to China, our expanding trade to India, and also our trade with the ASEAN economies combined. So whilst the IMF said lower growth in Asia, it did continue to say positive economic growth. So we're better placed than most for a whole range of reasons, but this is a very, very serious and grave international economic crisis, and the response has to be an international community response. It has to be a global response.
And that response seemed to be to stabilise everybody's banks. And we've got that report today where the Rudd government is expected to announce that it will guarantee people's savings beyond the $20,000, maybe up to $100,000, as indeed the opposition has been suggesting.
Well, the key thing here is to bring stability to the financial system internationally, to make sure there's not a drastic or dramatic credit crunch. And so quite correctly, quite responsibly, our Budget Cabinet Committee met yesterday. They'll have a further meeting today. They'll get further advice from the Treasurer as a result of his IMF and G20 meetings. We'll do what is required to keep our own system safe and secure and what is required to assist internationally.
Well, I guess the point is that if Europe and indeed the United States comes to give these guarantees for deposits, Australia can't really afford to keep out of that.
Well, as I say, and as the Treasurer says, this is a global crisis. It requires a global response. So one of the reasons we've been so careful to not just speak to our own regulators, financial service regulators and prudential regulators, but also to be speaking internationally. It's why the Prime Minister's been on the phone to his counterparts, but why we've also been speaking to the international regulators. So there is a sense here that this is a crisis that the international community has got to meet together. So we're obviously in close contact with what other countries are contemplating, and we'll obviously bear that in mind as we make our decisions in the course of the day and in the course of the week.
What about a health check on our region? You've been up in Asia, as you said. The Nikkei fell 9% in one day during the week, and of course growth in China is coming off. Are you still fairly confident, though, that our trading partners will keep their head above water?
Well, I think the remarks of the governor of the Chinese Central Bank overnight were very positive, which was China continues to want to expand domestically. That obviously helps us with our exports. But we saw the Asian financial crisis, a decade and a half or so ago. They made a range of structural changes, which I think is helping now. They will be the subject of reduced economic growth, and that will have an adverse impact, just as we will be on the receiving end of lower economic growth. But because we trade into Asia, there'll still be positive economic growth there. I think even though we're going through a financial crisis, the order of which we haven't seen for very, very many years, Australia is much better placed than other nations to cope with that, and to cope with it in a context of slower but still positive economic growth.
Just going to the tragic Lapthorne case, are there any lessons for the Australian government out of that sad case?
Well, we believe that we did everything possible to render assistance to the family, and we will continue to do that. It's, of course, a terrible tragedy, and it's just the terrible worst nightmare for the family. We've indicated we'll provide every assistance to return Mr Lapthorne and his son to Australia together with Brit, and there's always a chance to review these things when the dust settles. We do that in the normal course of events. I think it's important to make this point, though, Paul, where we've got nearly 1 million Australians overseas at any point in time. Currently on our books we have up to 50 people missing. Providing assistance to Australians overseas, particularly in difficult cases where someone's missing, requires the cooperation of the authorities of the nation state where they are. And we worked very closely with the Croatians to make sure that no stone was left unturned to discover Brit, and we're confident that that occurred.
But couldn't people get the impression that had the Lapthorns not started to jump up and down and go very public and very critical in the media, then perhaps we wouldn't have acted as we did?
Well, I'm absolutely convinced that our officers, from the first moment they were advised she was missing, did everything they possibly could with the Croatian authorities. So I'm confident about that. I've also made this point, and I make it again. In terrible circumstances like this, the family, frankly, is entitled to say whatever they want to say. That's my attitude. They're going through a nightmare. I'm not proposing to quibble with what they're saying publicly, but I am confident in this case, as in very many others, that our consular officials did everything humanly possible to render assistance to the family in what was a terrible and tragic circumstance.
When we return with the panel, we ask, has our Afghanistan commitment got a future in light of the US election? And eBay may be the answer to Peter Costello's flagging book sales. The former treasurer was drawn into the harsh commercial realities of speculative capitalism as he signed copies of his memoirs.
OK, thank you.
Me, of course, but just your name's
You don't put your Jane on it?
No, that's all right.
OK.
I want to sell it on eBay, Peter. I'm investment-minded.
Good on you.